Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nidaul Hanief. I'm from class 6 PBI A2. Here I will explain the material about drawing illustration. So, what is illustration? Illustration comes from Latin illustrates, which means explain or to explain. According to PBI, illustration is a picture that used to clarify the page views, a book, essay, and so on. From the two understanding above, it can conclude that illustration is a picture that used to clarify book, essay, paper, and so on. An illustration can bring the story to life. Illustration is divided into two types. There are manual illustration and digital illustration. Manual illustration is illustration that makes from on the paper by using pencil, ink, color, crayon, and other manual media. And digital illustration is illustration that made by software in computer or smartphone and other electronic media that compatible with drawing software such as Photoshop, IPS Paint, Krita, and others. There are three illustration objects, that is human, animal, and plants. The types of illustration. The first is caricature. Caricature comes from Italian word caricare, which means a representation of something that is certain, but is made by drawing or painting. Caricature is made by using unique and funny forms. You can find illustration is using to criticism about something that happened, like hot topic, news, or others. The next is comics. Comics is illustration that using a story and visual picture that's combined in order. Comics usually in a form of book, and nowadays there are online comics that easy to use and read. Comics can be full color or black and white. The next is cartoon. Cartoon is illustration that present the interesting picture and usually contain interesting stories. Cartoons not only made to entertain the reader but also have a hidden meaning in there to present the information. The next is literary works illustration. This illustration is used to emphasize the meaning of a word in such a novel, short story, and others literary works media. This illustration can arouse the reader to understand the meaning of each word in this paper. The next is vignette illustration. Vignette illustration is used to make the narrative more meaningful. It usually insert in the blank of page in the paper. The next is illustration function. The first is to beautify the looks, and the second is to outline the content or story from the books, such novel, short paper, newspaper, and so on. The third is to represent the experience in a visual form. The fourth, to make an item easy to understand, and the last is to attract someone who saw it. There are 4 steps of making illustration. The first is determine the idea. Choose the idea that interesting so you can make the shape of your illustration to become beautiful. The next is sketching. After determine the idea, you can draw the sketch by using pencil. The sketch is important because it can determine the concept of your drawing. The next is coloring. After you save sketch, you can add the color in your drawing so it can look more beautiful. And the last is finishing. In this section, you can add the other aspects such as detail or add more shading in your illustration so it can make your illustration more colorful and beautiful. And the next is exercise. You can do this exercise in your home and you can submit it in the next meeting. So that's the material for me, more or less. I'm sorry. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.